Okay, welcome everybody to the Knowledge Network on Climate Assemblies Innovation Market. This is the third time we've run this event. The idea is that different people from within the KNOCA network can suggest ideas and pitch ideas to fellow community members, and then we have a series of breakout groups around those ideas. It's an open space, basically. Those of you who aren't pitching get to choose to whichever group you want to go to. It's a bit more difficult than the standard open space where you could just go and walk somewhere else. If you're really not happy with the conversation, you can come back into the main space and put you somewhere else. But the idea is that simple. I forgot to say, we are being recorded, but it's only the person who's being pinned who can speak. What we will do is go through a process. We've got two rounds. And in each round, we'll get the person who's promoting the particular idea to just give a 1 to 2 minute pitch as to what they would like to talk about in their group. You'll then be able to choose which group to go into. There'll be about 35 minutes for each group. Come back out of the groups. There'll be a quick summary again from the person who led it, just talk a little bit about what was said. And those are the bits that we're going to keep a recording of and then share with the wider community. Unfortunately, we don't have the facility to record what's going on in each group. The people running the groups could potentially do that if they wish. This is a slightly, I'm a bit of a, Mark and I, who's from Democracy X, we're a bit of control freaks. We don't like this. This is a bit anarchic, but this is it's a really good way to find out what's going on in the rest of the community. And today we're going to have a whole series of different breakout group possibilities around tipping points, about the use of referendums, assemblies in universities, data-driven dialogue, preparing a response to from assembly, rethinking the global assembly, empowering workers, exploring patterns in assembly, and also using assemblies to rethink GDP. So this is a real wide range. I'm sure there's going to be something in there for everybody. So let's start with the first round, and we've got four. One of them had to drop out. We've got four presentations, very quick presentations, and I'll be quite brutal after a couple of minutes. I'm going to come in and stop you if you haven't stopped yourself already. The first is from Giuseppe Dalpra, who's talking about accelerating social tipping points, the Odyssean process for climate action, and he is the CEO of the Odyssean Institute in the United Kingdom. So over to you, Giuseppe.
Thank you very much, Graham, and everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, and good night to anyone who's joining us in the spirit of Jim Carrey globally. So I'll be as quick and as provocative as I can. We are collectively, in any number of countries, failing pretty catastrophically to address the climate crisis. We're cruising towards something like 3 degrees, and one of the most severe aspects of if we hit those kinds of temperatures are climate tipping points, things that might lock us into especially severe outcomes for the very long term. So in order to mitigate that, we need much faster action than we would have preferred to have to take, and we are way overdue to take it. So I'm sure you'll all already be familiar with the fact that citizen assemblies have efficacy for breaking through deadlocked or polarized issues and for helping create comprehensive recommendations that might be very useful for exactly this. The Odyssean process adds two innovations to that, or rather combines them in an integrated framework. So because we're dealing with multiple systems failures in terms of the media's communication of these issues to the public, the distillation of scientific information and uncertainty, and getting that to the public, and the political Overton window, especially in countries like the United Kingdom or America, but again, multiple countries beyond that, are not keeping pace with the scientific evidence and what we need to do. The Odyssean process basically then works by having a horizon scan at the beginning. So in order to try and distill the science more effectively, combine disciplines that might not always be presented either in citizen assemblies or elsewhere, and do so in a rigorous fashion so that biases are reduced and groupthink is reduced amongst the experts. The process begins with a horizon scan, and we did one last year, which is the first of its kind, on tipping points for global catastrophic risks. So the work that we do is actually more general than just climate sustainability, but climate was the reason that I started doing this work in the first place. So at the beginning, you have the distillation of the science in a horizon scan. Then we use a method of modeling called decision making under deep uncertainty. And this is where you simulate thousands of different scenarios. For example, 0.1 degrees, 1.1 degrees, 1.2, 1.3, all the way up to, let's say, 7 and plus degrees of warming, in order to actually generate Pareto optimal interventions based on the preferences of the citizens involved. So the idea here is, rather than using legacy modeling, which is used a lot in policymaking, where you just pick a few assumptions, proceed based on that, and maybe manually combine them with something like scenario planning, we do that at a larger scale and run hundreds and thousands of simulations to try and give a much more robust acknowledgement of uncertainty. And both of these, the qualitative distillation of science from horizon scanning and the quantitative simulation of the scenarios through decision making under deep uncertainty, are designed to then enrich the eventual citizen assembly that the Odyssean process culminates in. So currently we're working, preparing one potentially with the government of Iceland for AI governance, but we would very much like to do this for climate tipping points in order to encourage and catalyze social tipping points, because we are way behind where we should be, and we're increasingly approaching the thresholds that the IPCC outlined as likely to lock us into much worse outcomes than we can probably survive as a civilization. So
Okay,
in short, we're trying to fix multiple systems failures with this integrated process and work with any number of governments to try and generate comprehensive systems change rapidly.
thank you very much, Giuseppe. That's great. And the second pitch is from, I'm not sure if it's from both Rabea and Sinner, but one of them talking about from the, oh no, I can't pronounce that, Bürgerbeauftragten Klimaschutz in Germany. That was a terrible, I'm sure, linking climate assemblies and referendums. How can we involve the maxi public? So is it Rabea? Yeah, great.
Yes.
Over to you, Rabea.
Thanks,
2 minutes for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough name even for Germans.
Okay, that's good to know.
So the organization is called Bürgerbegehren Klimaschutz, and I'm working with them, especially on communications, but also running a new pilot project together with the organization Mehr Demokratie. And as Graham already said, we're combining in that pilot project local climate assemblies with binding referendums. So this is rather new in Germany because we don't have national referendums. So this link that we know, for instance, from Ireland, we can't do. But what we want to try to do is to have local referendums, which have a climate assembly beforehand. So in our project, we're testing that combination in 3 cities. We already found 3 cities, but that was a really tough project process that I would like to discuss as well, where the local government has committed to first have a climate assembly on a controversial climate issue. In 2 of the 3 cities, it will be on mobility. And after that, there will be a referendum, basically testing if the wider population agrees with the recommendations. We also have a scientific team on board that will evaluate the success of the project and, of course, see if it has potential for a broader rollout across the country. So our question to the group, we basically invite you to discuss the challenges in the process design of the assembly, but also in that, especially in that transfer phase between the assembly and the referendum. We want to discuss the design, but also the communication that comes with that. And we want to especially focus on how to engage the wider public and ensure they are well informed and prepared to vote in the referendum, because of course, our goal is to have a higher acceptance of climate policy in the end. So we need to make sure that people are well informed and follow the process throughout. And I think that's it.
The next is Emilie Frenkiel, who is an associate professor in political science at UPEC in Paris, and organizer of a number of student citizens' assemblies. And she's the initiator of UniDelib, which is a challenger to KNOCA, which is actually focused on, as it says in the title, assemblies being run in universities. So over to you, Emilie.
Hi, thank you for having me here. I'm really happy to meet you all. And so, well, a starting point is that actually universities are quite a unique place to organize citizens' assemblies. We're training young people, future citizens, or already young citizens, future workers, decision makers. We're already conducting research. We're already sharing research. We should definitely work on reducing our environmental impact, and in a very bizarre manner, academics are not so aware of this. Well, not all of us. And we're also very much connected in terms of networking, and also connected with our territories, with our local and national governments. And if universities are conjointly organizing Climate Citizens Assembly, that's quite a large scale. And the other good news is that organizing citizens' assemblies is a bit cheaper and more convenient in university, even though it's still a very hard process. So there are already 22 universities belonging to 6 different countries that are part of the network of deliberating universities. And so we'd like to share more of what we're doing with you, and maybe get you more involved in the network.
Thank you, Emilie. That's great. I'm actually just spent a couple of days in Paris with Emilie and colleagues, because we're just about to run an assembly at my university, which I'm a little bit worried about, but I'm sure it'll be fine. So the third person is Evelien Nieuwenburg, who is the co-founder of DemBrain Netherlands. And Evelien is interested in talking about accelerating climate assembly insights with ECHO, making every voice count through data-driven dialogue. So over to you, Evelien.
All right. My name is Evelien. I'm one of the co-founders of DemBrain, and we build tools to support dialogue-driven processes to really make sure that you can gather the insight and speed up decision-making together. So I want you to imagine for a second, what if 1,000 voices and hundreds of conversations created clear proposals in 10 minutes instead of 10 weeks? Imagine hosting a climate assembly, and to some of you, this might be your day-to-day. You might be doing it tomorrow. People spend hours sharing insights, but all that energy comes with weeks of manual processing. And despite all the passion, 95% often what is shared gets lost in translation from post-its and flip overs into action. And that means that 50 to 75% of assemblies end with inconclusive results and unclear recommendation to policymakers, failing to make the impact we all want, and we don't live up to people's hopes. So how can we ensure that these insights become actionable proposals? This is why we've developed ECHO. It's a platform that transforms parallel conversations into recommendations in real time. Participants use their phone to transcribe their conversation, and meanwhile the host can create the insights directly, giving them back to the people within the same session, allowing for iteration and validation by the participants themselves. So in your session, people can see their first results, can refine them together, and work towards these recommendations while experiencing what collective alignment feels like. And ECHO, the result has been really transformative, and partners of ours say that what they got done in an afternoon, some of them were not able to do in a year's time. We've worked with public organizations. We've processed over 4,000 voices, where 90% actually feels more heard than in a traditional process. And this way we make sure that every time ECHO is used, there is 100% certainty of concrete outcomes, and especially crucial when climate can't wait. Now, there is an elephant in the room, of course. Yes, we use AI, but I want to briefly share with you about how serious we take that. We are aware. So 10 hours of transcription and vivid dialogue that we document, and 1 elaborate prompt to get these first insights is about the equivalent of using 8 pieces of blank A4 papers, about between 30 and 40 grams of CO2. But to me, I think the real question is, what is the cost of delaying climate action by weeks or months? Okay. If you want to talk more about this impact, about sharing when you participated and felt heard in your session, please join my session and let me know also as an organizer, what are your biggest challenges? And we can figure this out together. And of course, you'll see the tool in action. So thank you.
Okay. That was a very neat presentation. Very impressive. Okay, so a reminder, we've got accelerating social tipping points, linking climate assemblies and referendums, organizing climate assemblies in universities, and using data-driven dialogue to make all voices count. So one of my colleagues will now miraculously provide us with the 4 options in terms of which room you'd like to go into. And we'll be returning to the room in about 35 minutes time. Although I think it might be 50, we're going to go to 15:50. So actually we've got a little bit longer. I'm guessing everybody's been thrown out of their rooms. That which is the sign of in the middle of a conversation. That, of course, that's the sign of a good breakout group. So we've got giving each host a couple of minutes just to reflect on some of the things that were said in the breakout group, just to give other people a sense of what went on. So Giuseppe, do you want to give us just a quick minute or two about the kind of conversations that you were having within your group on tipping points?
Absolutely. So I basically gave a fuller presentation on how the Odyssean process tries to fix problems in the, let's say, distillation of ideas from the sciences, the fact that decision making is necessarily extremely complex when it comes to a very big, wicked problem like the climate transition, and how we can actually hope to combine the quantitative and the qualitative data from the horizon scanning and the simulation respectively to produce recommendations. There were some really excellent questions about how do you keep this transparent. The answer to that is that we have a combination of generalist experts in the sense that they rewrite each other's issues to make sure they're amenable to a general audience. All of our findings are published in terms of open access journals and also broken down in an amenable way for the deliberation. And furthermore, there were some questions about the kind of technical approaches to the modeling, and also some examples given of local deliberations that also worked with experts and citizens to co-create their inputs. And there was also a question as to, have you seen anyone else doing this? And as far as we know, we're the only organization that's trying to rigorously combine these 2 modes of evidence in the way that we are to prepare citizen assemblies in the way that they will be strongest, basically, to address this. So I really enjoyed the breakout room, and I'm happy to see people from various ministries there, and also from the Netherlands, where the modeling that we use is used probably most extensively in the world. So there's a nice little confluence in the people who attended and the approaches. So
that's great. Thanks so much, Giuseppe. And I also want to give you the award for the nicest shirt in the breakout groups. It's usually me, but today I've gone. I don't know what my look is. Someone said I look like Jean-Paul Gaultier, but I don't think so. But I think your shirt is excellent. So thanks for that. So thanks for it. That sounds like a really interesting breakout group. So the next one, Rabea or Sina, linking climate assemblies and referendums. Some feedback from your group.
Yes. Thanks to the group. Of course, it was not enough time to discuss.
Never enough time. Never enough time.
So we discussed the combination of citizens' assemblies and referendums, and especially the opportunities and the risks of the approach. And it was really good to get some input from the group. So we talked a little bit about how to convince stakeholders as well to get on board in the process, to kind of have them involved, but at the same time also trust the process. We also discussed how we make sure that the outcome of the referendum is really binding, because of course, even though it might be a binding referendum, you never know, is the law actually happening? And in the end, I think we would have gone more towards like, how do we also integrate lawmaking competence in the assembly? So that would have been interesting, would be a nice follow-up afterwards. And then we discussed the documentation of the assembly and basically what could we do to make sure that also the small group discussions are being kind of transparent in the maxi public. Can they follow maybe the inputs? Are they somewhere on the website? Is there other forms of documentations? And yeah, we gathered some good examples as well, and we'll definitely work with those.
Great. Yeah, sounds really interesting. Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks, Rabea. And thirdly, we've got Emilie, who's was talking about assemblies within universities. Emilie, do you want to give us a sense of the conversation?
Yeah, so I tried to introduce the network and the variety of citizens' assemblies that have already taken place in universities, and especially the fact that they were actually organized because most universities had to write their environmental strategy, kind of master plan. We had very interesting discussions on who the recipients were, and who the organizers, who the recipients were, and also we took quite a lot of the recipe to have students and a variety of students participate in these assemblies. And the question was, is there sort of participation fatigue if there are too many events? So how to keep students motivated, so I also tried to explain that to have a diversity of students, some universities are actually making it mandatory to participate. And so it's not even fatigue, it's actually resistance, initially. So we talked quite a lot about that. And then there were also questions on the type of, what's the outcome? And is it, are the recommendations all very, small, individual? Are there, token kind of actions, or how do we get systemic kind of more radical, more ambitious recommendations? And that's when the discussion was cut short. But time to say, yeah, I just had the time to say that actually, even during the very first assembly, it was very, very experimental. Actually, students came up with really meta, structural governance recommendations, and they were actually asking for a lot more and then sort of meaningful changes that would impact any kind of decision taken in the university. So I don't exactly know how we did that, but they did it.
Okay, yeah, well, empower the students. So there we go. Okay, thanks, Emilie. And finally, Evelien, who was talking about using AI in trying to accelerate climate assembly insights. So, Evelien, do you want to just give a little bit of feedback from what was being said in the group?
Yeah, sure. So when we were discussing, I shared a little bit more and how it works. I touched upon the case study that we did in Northern Ireland and how it affected the people's perception of willingness to share, because they saw that they were actually being heard and their ideas and stories were being captured and directly shaping the outcomes. It really motivated them to keep sharing, beyond to a point, according to the facilitator, in a way that she hasn't really experienced before, which is always, I think, an interesting thing to touch upon for a moment, because often people think AI is something that's scary. But we're really trying to capture the ideas and not the individual people that are sharing it. Then we had a brief discussion about what is it like to organize, what are the challenges there. I only had organizers. I also had a participant question, so I ended up answering that question for myself. What can be frustrating about being a participant in these settings, and when is it a success for me? Which is also a big part of why I started working on DemBrain in the first place. And then we just did some in-depth questions and exploration about what the tool can and can't do. And then our session was also over.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. That's really great. Okay, so we're going to have another round in about 10 minutes, but it's good Zoom etiquette to walk away from your computer, maybe go and make yourself a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, and we'll resume at 4:10. So we'll see you all back. So thank you very much for the people who ran the first round, and we'll see you all back in about 10 minutes time for the second round. Okay, welcome back, everybody. You had a good stepped away from your computer for a little while and didn't just do your emails. So the guilty look there, Emilie, the guilty look. We're on to the second round, and we've got 5 in this round. And the first one is preparing a response to an assembly as a government official, with the subtitle "An Impossible Job?" ? And this is Marvin Tiemessen, who is a policy officer at the Ministry of Climate and Green Growth in the Netherlands. I'm assuming he's thinking about how to receive the recommendations from the current climate assembly that's running nationally.
That's correct.
Marvin.
Hi, thank you for having me, and good afternoon, everybody. Well, as just said, I'm Marvin, work at the Ministry as a policy officer, and we're currently preparing for the next phase, which is of the National Citizens Assembly on Climate, which is currently running. This September, we expect to receive their final recommendations from the Assembly, and it raises an important and complex questions, and it's one we'd like to explore together with you. So how do we, in our role as civil servants, design the follow-up process in a way that maximizes legitimacy? A known key factor on how the Assembly itself is perceived, as well as its recommendations. Not only in the eyes of the participants, but also in the broader public's perception. And perhaps more crucially in our context is the perspective of ministers and politicians who will be asked to respond. And will, reality partly, mostly, will be my work to carry out. So we've been thinking about different approaches ourselves, and we're navigating through these practical and political realities that come with working in this cabinet. But yeah, we really believe there's value in hearing your perspectives. We will share our current thinking, and yeah, we're excited to hear from your own work, experience, and context. So it will be more of a working co-creation session, you could see. And we think it's also valuable for you to learn about and explore how we try to face this in certain and sensitive political climates in a hands-on way. So we're looking forward to the exchange, and hope you will be joining our session.
Thank you, Marvin. That's great. Thanks so much. The second one is being led by Dr. Francesca Rosignoli. Sorry, I'm pronouncing that wrong. Senior researcher at the Institute for Minority Rights in Italy. And this is rethinking the Global Assembly through lessons learned from subnational cases in Austria. So, Francesca, I'm sorry, I completely murdered your surname, but do you want to just tell us about the session you'd like to run?
Yes. First of all, thank you so much for accepting my abstract and for having me here today. And of course, as the title already suggests a little bit, the aim of this session is to rethink the Global Citizens Assembly, start by looking at 2 subnational cases of Vorarlberg in Austria and South Tyrol in Italy. And the choice of those 2 case studies is that basically the first in Austria is a long tradition in terms of Citizen Assembly for Climate, whether in Italy, in South Tyrol in particular, it is a very peculiar region because, as you probably know, people speak 3 languages, Italian, German, and Ladino. And so the Citizen Assembly was run in a very peculiar way by adopting a plurilinguistic approach on the one hand without simultaneous translation, and also by including a sort of stakeholder forum. So I will center the conversation by asking you whether you think that at the global level we should have a monolinguistic or a plurilinguistic approach, and whether we should have a sort of a global stakeholder forum, and finally how to include the most affected by the climate crisis, because I've noticed that in both experiences, those particular group of people were not sufficiently and adequately represented in the discussion. So this is basically the main goal of the session. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Francesca. And the third session, which will be on the importance of powering workers in high carbon sectors to have a voice in the decarbonisation of their industry, is with George Hibberd, who's from the organisation Safe Landing and is their trade union and workers' assembly lead. So, George, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. And hopefully you can hear me. My bandwidth seems to be quite low today.
We can hear you fine.
Great. Yeah, my name's George. I'm a former airline pilot. I used to fly for EasyJet. I now work for a community of aviation workers called Safe Landing. And today we're going to be talking about the idea and concept of workers' assemblies as a way of giving fossil fuel workers a voice in the transformation of our industries. We know that aviation has brought a lot of benefits to society, and we'll talk about those benefits, but we also acknowledge that it has caused a lot of damage, and we face a bit of a fork in the road for our industry, but also lots of fossil fuel industries around the world. And currently, particularly with aviation, there's not a positive worker-led vision or plan for the future of aviation that is both good for workers, good for the climate. So today we're going to be talking about the concept of workers' assemblies, which is basically the concept of citizens' assemblies transposed into industry and the workplace as a way of giving fossil fuel workers good information, good climate science, time to deliberate, and then a voice in how our industry transforms to inform government industrial strategy, what just transition may look like, and even down to processes like airport expansion consultations. So if you want to hear more about workers' assemblies and how fossil fuel workers can be given a voice in a deliberative, participatory way, head along to our breakout group.
Thanks, George. That's really interesting. It's really interesting. We've got two sessions, one on workers in industry, one on students in universities. It's really interesting that the model is being transferred into different spaces. So really interesting to hear that, George. Thank you. The fourth one is from Anja Salzer, who is research fellow at the University of Bolzano in Germany, who's going to be intriguing title, Exploring Patterns in Climate Citizens' Assemblies. I guess my question is, what kind of patterns? So over to you.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. And yeah, thanks. It's an amazing opportunity to be here today. I have the honor to represent an entire team from the University of Bolzano. We're working on the project which is called Climate Citizen Assemblies, an instrument for climate justice and inclusive decision making. And in our project, we are looking at climate citizen assemblies through a social ecological design lens, which means we don't only focus on outcomes, but also on the processes, the relationships, and the imaginaries that shape them. And we're especially interested in exploring how to strengthen the emancipatory and transformative potential of citizen assemblies. In short, we shift our focus from looking into assemblies as tools of participatory policymaking, but to becoming spaces of societal transformation. And through this lens, we've developed a set of patterns that we want to invite you to explore today. Think of patterns as like kind of distilled insights from recurring elements we've been observing. They're inspired by the pattern language of Christopher Alexander, and each one captures, let's say, a common challenge, but also a response to it. Things like communicating complexity or knowledge diversity. We know many of you have already been doing this work, holding space for complexity, plural voices, or navigating tensions. And we think actually it's these practices that we see a deeper potential of assemblies. They can become spaces for reimagining society. So yeah, we would like to build on the potential in this room, your experiences, and invite you to refine those patterns together with us and help support us to make them more reflective and transformative.
Thank you so much. That sounds really interesting. And the last one from Florian, Wagner, and Lorenz Trattner, who are from the 360 Degrees Good Economy Network in Austria, is about moving beyond gross domestic product and thinking about democratic ways of defining the common good. So I don't know which one of you wants to speak, but there's two of you there. So
okay, I'll start. It's actually the whole econ good movement that now wants to come up with something that helps us, like in a very broad sense, to overcome growth as a necessity for the economy. And as you probably know, there's many alternative well-being measurements, indicators like the Human Development Index or something derived from the Social Development Goals. And we think that the reason why those might not be as effective as we wish them to be is that they lack democratic legitimacy. So what our new thing is to come up with a democratic process defining what we really want from the economy, really putting qualitative values into the economy and saying this and that should grow, this and that can shrink. And therefore we are designing pilot processes. We have a very detailed idea of how they should run. We had 3 pilots in Spain and Germany, and now want to present our concept to you and hear what you can tell us to do even better.
Okay. Oh, sorry, you get the second one. Sorry.
Sorry, I just wanted to add that we like to hear from you also in the discussion, maybe about, for example, literature or projects or methods you can think about that can help us like develop this thing, because we're still in the developing process of this project. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. That's really cool. This is as a couple of people have commented in the chat. This is really hard now to know what to go and listen to and to talk about. So just a reminder, it's preparing a response to an assembly from within government, rethinking the global assembly, empowering workers in high carbon sectors, exploring patterns in climate assemblies, and a democratic approach to defining the common good. So there's got to be something in there for you. Okay, so as ever, my colleagues at Democracy X will share the breakout group options, and we'll be in the groups for about 30 to 35 minutes, and again have a little bit of feedback at the end. So enjoy your second session. Okay, welcome back, everybody. I'm sure my guess is, as ever, very interesting conversations that were broken up at the last minute as you were dragged back into the main room. So I'm just going to go through them in the order that we started with. So Marvin, do you want to give us a bit of feedback about what was said in your group around preparing a response to the Dutch Climate Assembly and what you learned?
Yeah, so we prepared a Menti for this to have like this co-creation, but there was, of course, not enough time. So I'll just try to do it out of my head. What is a real challenge is that from a civil servant point of view, it's difficult because you're not always in the steering wheel. You're in the back seat sometimes, but a lot of influence can be done inside the ministry, and in advising and being a good friend to the organizing organization, and that we're also quite doing a lot of good things already. But the main thing, I think, is trying to involve those participants and give them a voice during the key moments, like decision making, like how did we respond to these recommendations, and try to give those participants a voice. I think that's the most takeaway, and let it speak for itself.
Okay, fantastic. And we all wish you well with your work, Marvin.
Thank you.
Francesca, do you want any sort of feedback from the session from the Global Citizens Assembly discussion?
Yes, of course, we have a very fruitful conversation, and probably it raises more questions than answers.
You're an academic. Of course it does. Yeah.
So basically, I centered the conversation around 3 main issues: whether we should have a monolinguistic or a plurilinguistic approach, and whether would it be possible to create a global stakeholder forum representative of the of different lobbies, so to speak, to be included in the whole process of the Citizen Assembly for Climate. And finally, how to include the most affected by climate change, in particular disabled people or migrant people, or people that are usually not adequately represented in this process. And of course, we achieved we had a very fruitful discussion with many inputs and suggestions, but we didn't come up with a one single answer, so to speak. So basically the conclusion was that we should find a sort of balance between effectiveness on the one hand and inclusiveness on the other hand. So how to create a sort of balance between how to solve practical problems and but also to respect certain values. So the values of inclusiveness on the one hand, but also the importance to have to create a citizen assembly with a sort of impact. And so there's no one recipe. And the most important thing is that we respect our values, so that we set certain important values and what we want to prioritize, so to speak.
Okay, that's great. I mean, the idea that you would have redesigned the Global Assembly in 35 minutes strikes me as probably probably a bit more. That sounds really interesting. Thank you. Can we swap with Anja, who can talk about the patterns in climate assemblies?
I can try. My internet seems also not to be very stable.
I think what's happened is after we've just run over 2 hours, and at that point, KNOCA, the internet starts saying you've been spending too much time talking about climate assemblies. So.
Yeah, we've had a very inspiring session. We overwhelmed the participants probably a little bit with 29 patterns that we had started to develop. So they had to find their way through first. But then we've received a lot of very exciting and amazing comments reaching from proposals, very specific proposals on certain topics, examples, experiences were shared, things to reflect upon, up to like very general or more general feedbacks on how the cards resonated with the work people were doing. And yeah, we're very happy that we might be continuing with some of the participants of our working group to delve deeper into this work.
That's great. Actually, one of the things that happens often in these kind of processes is you actually oddly just meet people who you wouldn't have met otherwise, and they suddenly become collaborators, which I think is fantastic. That's really great. Okay, so Florian, Lorenz, do you want to give us a bit of feedback on your session, how that went?
Yeah, happy to share something. We had great luck that Giuseppe was in our room because he's planning on doing very similar stuff. So there might be a good connection that established right now. And yeah, we could talk about a main issue that we also face. The question if we put the expert inputs first, or if we want to make it totally open-ended and like let the citizens develop it on their own. And we are more on the second side, and we had a good discussion on this. But for everybody else who missed our talk, I'm putting my email address in the chat, and we recorded our presentation, so please reach out. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
That's fantastic. That's really great. Thank you. And George, are you still there? Do you want to come back in?
Yeah, sorry, my laptop just ran out of juice right at the opportune moment.
So I don't want to fly in your aeroplane if you can't even keep a laptop.
Well, I'm out of practice. I've not. That's my excuse. Yes, we went into a lot more depth about what a workers' assembly could look like. When we do know what a citizens' assembly looks like, they're quite well established, but a workers' assembly or sectoral assembly isn't very well established. So we did actually have some interesting conversations about who should be in the room, who should be in a workers' assembly when it's primarily focused on workers, but what other stakeholders are there that potentially should have a voice? Should it be local people? Should there be some general population? Should there be some representatives from the global south on the front lines of the climate crisis? And we also spoke about some of the barriers that we face when presenting the concept of workers' assemblies to union leaders and to politicians, and how we might overcome those barriers by popularizing assembly culture, and how climate activism might play a part in shifting the perception of what's possible and what can be done to give workers a voice.
Oh, it sounds fascinating. As I say, it's really interesting to me how this technology is being moved into organizations and into unions. Really interesting development. Thanks for that, George. Okay, look, that was a really, I hope people enjoyed that. I think it's a really nice opportunity for different parts of the different groups within the network working on different things to come together. Certainly It's a way of kind of expanding our knowledge of what's going on out there, and our imagination about what's possible. We're actually, it might seem a little bit early, but we're having a bit of a summer break at KNOCA and won't be doing another call until early September, where we're actually having a learning call on the Norwegian Future Panel, which has included reflections on their oil and gas fund. So it should be a really interesting call on that one. But for today, I'd like to thank the 9 people who presented. I think I obviously could only go to a couple of sessions. My sense is people really were engaged and enjoying the opportunity to hear from others. And I'd really like to thank my colleagues at Democracy X, Mark, Jard and Thomas, who have really pulled this together. And it is, I know it's a bit of an effort to do this kind of thing with so many moving parts. So thank you to the 3 of you for keeping us all in order. It's been relatively seamless. So thank you for that. And once again, I wish you all best of luck with your work, whether it's in advocacy, whether it's practitioner, or whether it's in relation to policy. And as ever, it's a real pleasure to spend a couple of hours with you all. You take care, everybody.